Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear this sound effect, you know it's time for, and Dodo saying hi, you know it's time for a newest episode of our, what is it? Short story go round. Short story go round or short story merry go round. Whatever it is we call this. The premise of this show is that I just talk about short stories, collections that I've been reading. I tend to, what I do is I kind of mix up short stories. I have a little set of stories I sometimes read. I always want to read through a collection. So I can't just read through it. It's just an anal quality of me. But I also like to read the book of stories. The book of stories always has a sort of flavor to it. Hi, Dodo. You want to come say hi? She was good for a bit, so now she'll probably be a pain in the ass. And so I like to have these on the shelves. You're going to have to get down. And the ones we're reading this week, I'm finishing a book we've talked about in the past. I'm finishing Michael Shea's DEMIURGE, the complete Cthulhu mythos tales of Michael Shea. It's basically a bunch of stories he wrote which are kind of inspired by or set in the world of Lovecraft, but they're transformed to usually the west coast of San Francisco. They usually sit around the city of San Francisco, which Shea writes about really well. The other book I read this week was The FIANCEE. Again, I like these old Penguin paperbacks just because I've reread them over the years. And this one's The FIANCEE. It's got a bunch of stories in it that I like. Dodo, you're really a pain in the goddamn ass. Come on, stop it. She's gotten really bad lately. Anyway, The FIANCEE, wonderful book. I'm going to put you away. Wonderful book, as everything by Chekhov is. And I think a lot of these stories I probably talked about recently. You know, okay, sorry. This is gonna have to go. You're going to go. Come on. Come here. Come on. You're going away. Come on. Come here. No, you're not going to get away with it. Come on. Come on. We don't want to watch people strangle a parakeet on YouTube. That would make I'd probably get a million subscribers if I strangle a parakeet. Look at this. Bird poo on my nice clean shirt. What are we doing here? We really should turn this into a real show. And anyway, this is a great book. I love Chekhov. I love to reread him. I forget most of his stories. Several of these stories I've already talked about, I'm sure, because a few of them I read. I think we talked about a few months ago when we put Chekhov in the All Bathtub Hall of Fame, for which his family still sends me thanks. And the collection sort of built around a long, probably his longest novella called 3 Years. And I read it in the past, but this time I enjoyed it more than I normally do. And it's one of the typical Chekhovian relationships, which is a man and a woman marry, and they're fairly unhappy with one another, and lots of things happen to them over 3 years, and they grow used to their lives, the ups and the downs, until they kind of reach this end of he does remind me a little of Trevor, or Trevor reminds me of Chekhov. They reach this kind of melancholy coexistence. It's a terrific long story. There's a lot of good short stories in here. I think we just talked about The Bet. That's still one of my favorite kind of crowd pleasing short stories of Chekhov's, about the man who bets. He bets some rich businessman that he can keep his mouth shut for 3 or 5 years and just sit in this room and isolate himself from all humanity for $1 million, $2 million. Terrific story. If you haven't read it, read The Bet. And then there was a story in here which I have read, but I didn't remember it as well, called New Villa, which I loved. And it's about something. It's one of the funnier Chekhov stories, which is about some engineer or some big businessman, a guy with a lot of money, who moves into this kind of rural place. And Chekhov likes to write, as many of the writers of that time did, about the relationships between these big landowners and the peasants who work the fields and live around them. And this guy moves into this village, and all the peasants they hate him, and they totally take advantage of him. And they're always like poaching on his property. And whenever he tries to be nice to them, he'll come and talk to them and say something like, I'm nice to you. I give you work. I let you take food when you need it. Please stop shooting my such and such and stop going on and poaching things. And they get all like stroppy, like he's threatening us. And anyway, it's a very funny story. Really, really comic and an enjoyable story. Anyways, it's very good. Oh, his wife, a very short story I used to use in class. I've forgotten it. His wife, again, Chekhov can set up these relationships really quickly and these kind of transformational moments in people's lives where they think they're going to transform their lives and they tend to just give up. And this is about a man who finds out his wife is kind of cheating on him, and the character, the girl, is just brilliant. He just does this wonderful character, this girl, and his wife is a very short Chekhov if you haven't read it. To go back to Demiurge, so I finished these stories. This is my first book of Michael Shea's. I don't think it's the best first book of stories to read of his. And again, I'm not trying. Oh, it's not Hippocampus, but it's a very interesting book. It's particularly interesting if you're kind of a completist of Shea and you like his work anyway. It's some of the stories they're all beautifully written and very visual, and he really writes about San Francisco well. But they're all kind of predictable in a way. They're all very much Lovecraftian stories. So, for example, some people deliver toxic waste to some toxic waste dump, and the toxic waste dump is filled with some unnameable spiritual evil. Or they go on a holiday cruise and the ocean is filled with some unnameable spiritual evil. Or they go underneath the ice of the North Pole and it's filled with some... So it just goes... Everyone's story has some of that. And having said that, every paragraph in the Michael Shea book is sort of beautifully written. I'll just pick this at random. And this is the story. What is this one about? Oh, there's one story called Demiurge, the last story in the book, which was not my favorite. But he describes this kind of creature who gets into the ecosystem of the earth and lives through all of the history of the adaptations of all these different species and life itself on Earth. And it's just some amazing prose in that passage. I don't know if I'll read it because there's just so much in it. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I'm kind of glad I finished it because I wasn't wrapped up in most of the stories. Incredibly well written. Made me a fan of Michael Shea, and I'm going to try his Nift the Lean books, which I hear are his best things, and some of his other books. But I enjoyed it a lot. Finally, Charles Schulz. I put it on my short story shelf. I think they're perfectly qualified as short stories. We're getting into the late ones. I've been reading these as they came out from the wonderful Fantagraphics people. This is 1991 to 1992. He still had I think he had another several years to go before old Schulz died. And they're all good. He's experimenting with the he had the 4 or 5 frame strip. And he's experimenting with lots of these kind of 1 frames, and then he'll do 3 and 1 frame, and he really breaks them up quite a bit. And some people liked it, some people didn't. I like it. I like it. Kind of really freshens up his strip and his characters and the way he tells his little stories. And every one is a little story, each single scene. So I must have read these, and then he does some that are just sort of visuals, like Snoopy going to Victoria Falls in Zambia. It's kind of nice. He's just experimenting what he can do on the page and with the color. That's a Sunday color edition. What else have I got loaded in here? The joke of the cookie. Yeah, the only way Snoopy will do anything is for the cookie. Anyway, they still live up. I still love Charles Schulz. They're still wonderful little short stories. There you go. There's a merry-go-round. That's the short story go-round this today. And I'm going to I think I have room. I can put a whole new set of short stories. In my short story stack, I get a whole 3 new volumes to put in there. Okay, stay safe.